Now we're going to see the application of the electrodes according to the International 10-20 system applied directly onto a patient. The patient will be lying down for two reasons. First reason is to relax better, and the second reason to reduce the artifacts to give a clearer result of the EEG. The material we will be needing are cup electrodes, conductive paste, plastic gloves, disinfectant to clean the skin, adhesive tape, gauzes, scissors, and smaller squares of gauze. Before proceeding with the EEG, I'd like to give you a few pieces of advice. It's important that the room be at the correct temperature. If it's too hot in the room, it would be a good idea to open the window, for example, or turn down the heating. Another important factor is to have mobile phones switched off, that of the operator and also of the patient. The lighting is also important. It should be not too dark. We wouldn't want the patient to fall asleep. We're here now with Francesco, who's volunteered to be our patient. So the most important thing we have here are the electrodes. The total of electrodes are 19, which we will be positioning on the scalp. And we also have two other electrodes which will be positioned on the scalp, the ground and reference electrodes. We'll be using 4 polygraphic electrodes. 2 will be used for the electrocardiogram and 2 to record the cardiac activity. Differently to the first tutorial, we will not be using the tape measure to place the electrodes this time. We will simply be using practical experience to place the electrodes. And you'll understand why as we go through the tutorial. This is the device where the electrodes will be connected to. There are numbers and letters, and each letter corresponds to a specific area of the brain. Let's take the example of O2, which the O means the occipital lobe, and the number 2 refers to the right-hand side of the brain. So on the device, all the even numbers refer to the right-hand side of the brain, whereas the odd numbers refer to the left-hand side of the brain. And the letters FZ, CZ and PZ will be placed along the central line of the head. First of all, we'll take the end of the electrode and we will place it into the device. In this case, I'm inserting the electrode into O2. Then I will take the cup of the electrode and put it into the paste with about this much paste and place it on the scalp. First, we'll be placing the electrodes at the back of the head in this area. The first electrode we'll be placing is the electrode O2. Once you have found the right point, take the gauze with the disinfectant and disinfect the part of the scalp where we'll be connecting the electrode. We need to rub the scalp well to reduce the impedances of grease found on the surface of the scalp. Then we'll take our electrode and we will position it on the scalp with a light pressure. we need at this point to take some of the patient's hair and cover it on top of the electrode, again exerting a light pressure so that it sticks well to the scalp. We can then lower the patient's head back down again. We will now be placing the second electrode into the hole O1 on the left side of the brain. So we will lift the patient's head up and take the electrode. We find the point of inion and approximately 2 centimeters up towards the center of the head and across to the left. We will part the hair and we will take our gauze with the disinfectant and rub the scalp lightly. We'll be placing the electrode, press lightly and cover with the hair. As you can notice, the electrodes are completely symmetrical. If we were to trace an imaginary line, they would be on the same axle. We'll continue by positioning the rear electrodes on the right-hand side of the brain. So we'll insert the end of the electrode P4 into the device. So we will position the electrode a little further up from O2 and place the electrode. We will then reposition the head back down onto the bed. We will continue with the same procedure to place the parietal electrode on the left-hand side of the brain. We will then proceed with the positioning of the first electrode on the rear midline, in this case PZ. You can do this by parting the hair at the center. So by parting the hair in the center of the head, we'll go to find the point between P3 and P4 to place the electrode. Now we'll be placing the ground electrode. We will position the ground electrode on the point inion. And we'll proceed with the positioning of the central electrode on the point CZ. To position the electrode in the correct place, we will take as reference points point A1 and A2. So we'll position our little fingers on the points A1 and A2 and reach up with our thumbs to meet at the top of the head. And at the point where the thumbs meet at the top of the head will be the correct position for the electrode CZ. To check the electrode has been positioned correctly, we can place our little fingers, one on nasion and the other on inion, and have the thumbs come together at the top of the head to meet at the point where the electrode has been placed, CZ. We will continue with the positioning of the electrode C4. So we'll take the starting point CZ and place approximately 4 fingers towards the right hand side to find the point C4.
Questo è il punto dove verrà messo C4.
We will continue in the same way to position the electrode C3. We can now proceed for the placement of the electrode FZ, starting from the electrode CZ. Place your 4 fingers along the midline of the head. We'll now be positioning the electrode F4, which is approximately 4 centimeters from the point FZ towards the right. Same procedure for the positioning of the electrode F3. We'll now be positioning the prefrontal electrodes, beginning with the right-hand side. The name of the electrode on the right-hand side is FP2. To find the correct positioning of the electrode, we start from the point nasion and we go upwards 2 centimeters and across to the right 2 centimeters. Because the skin is thicker on the forehead, we need to rub harder, causing a redness on the skin. At this point, we'll position the electrode and we'll be using the small square of gauze to fix it to the skin. We'll continue with the same procedure on the left-hand side of the head. This time we'll be moving 2 centimeters across from the center. We'll proceed with the reference electrode, which is not used for recording, and we will place it between the two prefrontal electrodes. We will rub the skin well again here. We will now position the electrode T4. As a reference point, we'll use the front of the pinner and measure 2 centimeters up to find the point to place T4. Same procedure on the left-hand side for the positioning of the electrode T5. We'll continue with the positioning of the temporal electrode T6, which we will be positioning behind T4. We can use the center of the top of the ear as a reference point to place the electrode.
Prendiamoci come punto di riferimento la punta dell'orecchio.
Same procedure on the left-hand side for the positioning of the electrode T5. We'll continue with the positioning of the electrode F8, which we can find a few centimeters further forward than the electrode T4. We use the same procedure to place the electrode F7 on the left-hand side. When we have a patient with very short hair or bald, instead of using the hair to fix the electrodes, we can simply use our small gauze squares to fix the electrodes. Once we have positioned all the cephalic electrodes, we'll go on to position the polygraphic electrodes. The first electrode we'll put at this point is the one needed for the recording of the cardiac activity. For placing the electrode, we have different holes that we can choose from. I'm choosing at random hole letter A. For the positioning of the electrode for the electrocardiogram, we will place the electrode at the center of the breastbone. The second electrode will be positioned just above the left clavicle. And to fix the electrodes, we'll be using the adhesive tape. For the connection of the electrode to reveal the eye movements, the electrocoologram, we will connect the electrode at random to the letter B. For the positioning of the electrode, we'll take as a reference point the center of the eye and go 1 centimeter above the eyebrow and then towards the right-hand side 2 centimeters across. And we'll position the first electrode. We'll fix the electrode with a small piece of adhesive tape. The next electrode will be positioned approximately 2 centimeters lower than the center of the eye on the cheekbone area. The positioning of these electrodes will allow us to record the movements of the eye, both vertical and horizontal. What we've seen up to now is a complicated experimental procedure. With daily practice, this will become a standard procedure.